morning, Reaper people. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands and, Disembodied Hands and no voice. Wow, I kind of reset to an earlier intro. Disembodied Hands, Quindy, and Justin, and sometimes John. And that's the kind of day it is. Hey, squirrel. It's that sort of day. How are you guys? On this happy 4th of November. Also, my 3-year anniversary of dating David. Also, the 4th day of NaNoWriMo, which I'm currently ahead on. Yeah, knock on wood for that one. Hello, Mayershire. Hello, everybody. Turgeon is lurking. We have a lurking Turgeon. You have coffee and the sun is shining. Yeah, not a bad November. Yeah. I'm like, yeah. I'm mood, Shadow Raven, as the kids say. All right. We're working on a dude today. Oh no, I forgot my palette. I knew there was one thing. See, squirrel. I'm a total squirrel today. Been running around like being a flibberty gibbet all morning. There we are. Super. So yeah, we have Vitanis, Hellborn, Warlock, and I was thinking, guys, we're going to finish his skin. So first we're going to work on that. But, how about doing him in teal? We haven't done teal, like, for eons. We haven't done it in a long time. We did teal on the Duelist. I think it was the last time. And I'm going to throw my paint all over the place, too. What do you think about teal for his cloth? It's a very unusual Warlock-y color, but we haven't done it in a long time. I was kind of in the mood to make him ambiguous as far as like his alignment. Teal is a good like color. We could take it dark if we wanna, or we can take it lighter. But yeah, I was thinking maybe just to switch it up. You guys there are a lot of teals that you guys like in the line. So like if you have a suggestion as to a particular teal you would like to see us use, that would be great. Meanwhile, I'm going to mix up our Phoenix Red, which remember is that top color on his skin tone right now. And we're going to start adding in some Explosion Orange. Explosion. The reason I would choose Explosion instead of Sunrise here is that Explosion actually has a little bit of oxide in it. So it has a tiny bit of brown in it. So it's going to work better with like the reddish browns that we were using for the base there. Let me see what I've got here. So like, yeah, it depends on how bright you want. Do you guys want a brighter, deeper teal, or do you want more of a grayed out teal? We probably want to go a little brighter. Just because his skin tone's going to have some pretty bright highlights. But we could go moderately muted if you wanted to. All right, let's get some orange mixed into this and see what I can do with it. I'm going to do a 50-50 mix of Phoenix Red and Explosion Orange to start with, just for his top highlights on his skin. I really do want them to come up pretty orange, kind of like flaming embers. Yeah, all right. Brighter teal. What do I have? I might not have a lot of really bright teals. Let me look. We may be able to mix something. I do have Deep Ocean. I probably have a couple of teals hiding in my blues. They tend to sneak over there. Surf Aqua is over there. Spectral Glow is over there. I think everything else in here is maybe blue though. But I have Deep Ocean here. I'll set them out to the side here, and we can look at them all. What is this? Yeah, that's more of a blue. That probably needs to go in actual blues. Some of these colors, I'm like, that is definitely more of a blue. Like Shark Bite is definitely more of a blue than a teal. And this one is too muted. So I'm going to shift that around a little bit. Doot, 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 doot. There we go. Made room in the back of my blues for these tealy blues. Now I'm left with a bunch of these, and we'll talk about these in just a second. I don't want to get distracted. I want to finish the skin. Then we can work on the teal. Excellent. Sweet. All right. Now remember, orange is like, orange totally lacks coverage when you try to actually use it to base coat something, but when you're trying to layer with it, it tends to be very stubborn and not want to go transparent like you want it to. Now, because the red in the Phoenix red is so pervasive, the explosion orange is not coming, like this color is very red still. When you are doing that, when you're mixing red, something with a lot of red into it, into something with orange or yellow, you're going to notice the red is overwhelming. So if you really want that to come up, you're going to have to go toward more of a 2-to-1 or even a 3-to-1 with your red color in order to get it to be a brighter color. Brighter, lighter, orangier color. Because it takes a bit. Yellow is such a weak pigment that it will take a lot of yellow to overwhelm red. Alrighty, we're gonna try this and see. I feel like I need more water, but you never know. I also feel like lately I need to do some like vision exercises. I feel like my vision is my real life vision is getting farther and farther away. So when you do layering, you want to have very little paint on your brush, and you want to start pointing the brush toward the shadow and then pull back toward your highlight. Because when you lift up your brush, you leave a little tiny puddle of the color that's on it. And this is how you create the illusion of a blend. In reality, even with the best blends, if you put them under a microscope, you're probably going to see brush strokes unless there's been a lot of glazing or some wet blending. Bring up some orange up here. Up on top of the muscle, you're going to get a lot of that orangey color. And I like to use layering unless good morning basement. You are all caps. You are shouting good morning. And hello, Bob and Julie. Guten Morgen. Bon matin. I don't know how to say it. Oh, buenos dias. All right, just little bits of highlights here to bring this orange in. Pop out the details on the hand even more. Come in and add it to the face. And actually, going red-orange with this skin tone is exactly a complementary color to teal. Because red is complement to green, and orange is complement to blue. So when you have a blue-green, it is actually a perfect complement to your orangey red. And that's why David loves, his favorite color combos are teal with red or orange. There we go. And then that finger, that little littlest finger, pinky finger, needs to have a little bit more highlight on it because it's kind of curling inward, so it's going to catch the light a little bit more. There, everything is showing up lovely. Those highlights make such a nice difference. Alrighty, let's get this forehead. That's going to be mostly the light color. So I'm really not... When you get to faces, guys, like, the most layers you're ever going to be able to do is 5, and that's on a face with no facial hair. And a lot of like clear territory. And that means, I mean, and that's saying that is like your final 2 highlights are pretty micro. So usually 3 layers of good highlighting on a face is good enough at 28 millimeter, because you're just going to lose it. There's just no room to really leave space between layers, because there's these areas, especially on a bearded face, these areas are so tiny. So most people should probably just concentrate on getting 3 good layers on a face. Like midtone, shadow, and at least 1 highlight, and then maybe 1 more highlight just to really get the details to stand out. But trying to do more than that tends to be just counterproductive. You just cover up whatever your previous highlight was without a lot of improvement, because 28 millimeter faces are teensy. I'm gonna get the knuckles down here. Now, I don't mind covering up some of my previous highlight here, because I did want more of an orangey tone to the skin than I had. I wanted to cover up some of that red with some orange. And I will put on 1 more tiny highlight with just Explosion Orange itself. But that's going to be such a tiny highlight. Like, your final highlight on this kind of thing is going to be so small. So teensy. So don't think you're doing something wrong if you only put 3 layers of highlighting on a face. Oh, thanks for the raid, Mike Moans. Hello. Oh, okay, you were going D&D. Fantastic. Oh, cool. Draconian Cleric today. Fantastic. Yeah, we're working on the Hellborn, aka Tiefling Warlock, as you can see. Getting the skin tones to come up properly. And just talking about, you probably caught part of it, how you really don't have a lot of room on 28 millimeter faces to do a ton of highlighting. So don't feel bad if you don't do a live, if you feel like you're not doing enough. You probably are doing enough. As long as the features stand out, that's really the important thing. So hi, for everybody from Mike's stream, I am Anne. I work for Reaper Miniatures. I now work for Reaper Miniatures remotely, but for many, many years, 17 of them to be precise, I worked on site with Reaper. I created the Master Series paint line and was their staff painter, on-site staff painter. So that is my resume. Then I moved out here to be with my awesome guy, and they kept me on as a streamer. So every morning we are here painting Reaper Miniatures. Sometimes we're doing monsters. We've been doing the bronze golem from Reaper's Kickstarter. So we've been doing a lot of verdigris, cool stuff. And even though I do a fairly advanced painting, I would say, even though we do that, I answer a lot of questions from every level of painter, because I really am all about like education. I'm here because I love to teach. So if you have any questions, even if you feel like they're noob questions, like especially if you feel like they're noob questions, please ask, because if you're thinking it, chances are at least a few other people in the chat are thinking it, and they're just not brave enough to ask. So feel free. Your question will help other people. Yeah, the Hellborn. This one, I always loved this guy, and I think he's really good. This is the Bones Black version. I think he's really good in Bones Black. Like, the metal version, I think, is cool, but he's such a slug, such a heavy slug of metal. I really like the crispness of the plastic on this one. Bones Black's pretty good that way. Bones USA is even better, but we do not have a Bones USA version of this. Oh, nice. Paladin Hellborn. That's interesting. You kind of gotta, when you got one of those in your party, you're kind of like, so who exactly are we praying to again? Maybe you don't want to ask that question. Maybe there are some questions you just don't want to ask your Hellborn Paladin. Are you, you're doing 5th edition on your stream, Mike? Oh, you paint on stream. Oh, okay. More half giants. Yeah, I know. There's always some. Yeah, there's always some races that just feel like they don't get the love. I'm really happy to see more Hellborn lately, and really well sculpted ones. Like, this guy is really cool. And more like Dragonkin type stuff out there. And like the cat folk, the tabaxi, like getting some love and stuff like that. All right, there we go. Got the hand kind of curls under here, so I'm going to keep it mostly in shadow and not bring it out quite to see how it... You can see naturally how it... I've got a big ring light up in this direction. So you can see how that part of the hand naturally falls into shadow. So you don't want to spend a lot of time putting highlights down there because it really wouldn't be getting a lot of light. So yay, it's part of the hand that you don't have to blow a lot of time on. That's good. That improves your speed. Identifying parts of the model that you don't need to really spend a lot of time and work on is a good part of learning to paint a little faster and more efficiently. You get that nostril, really want to bring that in, got to bring this cheekbone up, and then we can move on. Yeah, move on to our final tiny highlight, which... You know, for gaming, this is more than good enough, but since I tend to do these and give them to Reaper for their gallery, I'm going to go the extra step and put one tiny little really hot ember orange highlight on, and that is, we're going to use Explosion Orange for that. Good morning, crows. So yeah, we're going to be using teal to paint this guy's robes. I did mention last time that he's got a kind of a weird setup in that he's got a skirt and he's got a cape, but then he also has this little thing here that is coming out from under his arm, this piece of cloth here, which is totally a separate piece. So we'll have to figure out what to do with that. Probably black, but we'll see what we're going to do. He's got a pretty complicated setup because he was designed by Reaper's staff artist, I believe, concept artist, Talon, Izzy Collier. And Izzy loves off-center design schemes. She loves asymmetrical designs, so she usually likes to build up one side of the mini and then have the other side be a little more minimal, which makes sense if you're like a sword person. You want your arm free to actually utilize your weapon, but then you want armor on the rest of you, right? So sometimes she just likes to do it just as a visual design thing, which I think this model just has a cool visual design. So yeah, so we're gonna have to figure out how to tackle this little extra bit of cloth that is not the cape. And we'll have to figure out how we're gonna tackle the cape. I mean, it's all just like, what are we gonna do here? There's so much stuff, which is part of the reason I wanted to tackle this model on stream, because he has so many layers of stuff. He has so many little things to paint. And that can really freeze you. Like, when you're trying to figure out what color to paint everything, that can be really, really difficult for painters who maybe aren't, haven't painted a lot, and they're used to simpler models, and they pick up something like this because it looks so cool, and then they're like, oh my god, what am I going to do? Do I have to paint everything a different color? Like, yeah. So we're going to talk about that as we move on with this guy. But the key thing, really, is to get your main color scheme down first. So if we're going to be using this really dark skin tone that's coming up to red and orange, and then we're going to be using teal for a lot of our cloth, then we can work from there and figure out, okay, what's the rest of this stuff going to be? And kind of tackle it one area at a time. Since some things are obviously leather and some things might be bone. So you tackle the things that are obvious first, and then you look at kind of where the holes are in your color scheme. So we'll get into that as we go through this model. We do, for those who are new, we do kind of a rotation. I work on 6 different models during the course of a given week. We tackle 5, and then there's an extra one just to make sure that, the same model isn't always on the same day. So if somebody can only tune in Tuesdays, they'll at least get to see something different every week. But we go essentially in a line, and then we loop back around to the front, and I'm working on 3 monsters, 2 characters, and a bust right now. We just started our first bust, and that'll be exciting. All right, let's get this Explosion Orange just thinned down a little bit. Yeah, and then you kind of curse her because she's got all those tiny details. Then the sculptors have to put them on the model, and then you have to paint them. But yeah, the designs are super cool, no question. You can always tell an Izzy design, I think. All right, so like I said, orange looks like it's really weak, and you would swear it's weak when you're trying to base coat with it, but when you're trying to highlight smoothly with it, it actually has more strength than you'd think. So I thinned it down 2:1 with water. And it is different enough. You can see the previous color that we had, which was about a 2 or 3:1 explosion with Phoenix Red, which is a very orangey red. And now we're going straight up to explosion. That'll be a final highlight on the skin. And I'm only going to I'm going to test this out just right here on the pec. And I'm only going to hit the very top area. And I just want to see if my orange is bright enough to really carry, or if I'm going to need to make it a little bit lighter. Or stronger, sorry. That is the other risk, though, is that, yeah, okay, it'll work. Because you want it light enough. You want it thinner so that it doesn't just leave a blob of orange, but you also want it to show up, right? So I'm like, not convinced. I am seeing a little bit. I'm going to just go with this, and I can always tune it later. That's the other thing. Since we haven't painted any other part of this model, we really have no idea how this skin color is going to look at the end of everything. As we add more colors, we're going to see this change. So keeping that in mind, I often will do what I call a soft finish. So I'll paint something until I think it looks pretty good, and then I'll just stop. But I know that at the end, when I've done everything else, I may need to adjust this color to make it look better with everything else. So we're going to just pop in a tiny little highlight on these areas. Here or there or there. Just to bring in just a little bit more. I really like to do pretty high quality stuff for Reaper for the gallery, so and Ron likes getting presents, so though I didn't ask him if he liked the minis I gave him for at ReaperCon this year, so it's either because I assume he liked them, or like I don't want to hear it if he didn't. I don't have to like, you know, actually like hear the feedback on site anymore, so it's funny. Plus Ron and I have like worked together for so many years now. It's like, it's painted, he's happy. Yeah, basement. There is, but it was mostly, it's been weird, right? Because we did core and then we did HD, which is now canceled. And HD was meant to be a higher coverage out of the bottle line. You could still do everything with it, but it was just a slightly higher coverage line because we were using higher density pigments for a lot of the bases. But then HD got canceled when Bones came out because people liked Bones. Bones was originally just a Bones branded. It's just like Bones because we were doing Bones. But I set it up to be like the HD line, just a slightly different selection of colors that kind of filled in some holes the HD line didn't have. And Bones also has new paint technology in it. Like the metallic paints in Bones are totally different than the metallics in our regular line. But then when HD got canceled, a lot of the favorite HD colors got ported into Bones because, again, the two lines were very compatible. They were created with the same goal in mind, which was to create a slightly higher coverage line, just to make your base coating easier, and for people like who doing things like wet blending, where a thicker paint or a better covering paint is useful. The core line, though, also has all of the additives in it. It has like the lining paints in it. It has the Clear Brights single pigment colors in it. It has all the specialty stuff in addition to primers and sealers and additives. So totally different, and different doesn't necessarily mean better. It depends on the way you're using it. So like for our bronze column back then, for this guy, we're actually not using any Bones metallic colors. All of this guy is done with our core metallics, and there's a reason for that, and it's the way that the paint the shine the paint has to it. The Bones line gives us a shinier metallic still in a non-toxic metallic, which is what we wanted. But it also, sometimes shinier isn't necessarily better. If you want to do a lot of weathering on it, then you're going to spend a lot of time taking that shine down. Whereas if you have a line that's naturally got a little bit more muted sheen, not only is it going to photograph better, but it's going to be easier to do your weathering techniques on. And you can always go to bones for the final hit if you want a super high shine on like little tiny bits of it. But when you're doing a lot of weathering, I find that the core metallics are very useful. You can do it with either. It's just, again, it's like, what's your preference? What's your goal? What's your preference? What are you trying for? But all the paints from all the lines that Reaper does are completely compatible with each other and mixable with each other. And that's what I do typically on stream. I use a lot of core because there are certain colors in core that I just couldn't be without. But there are also a lot of bones and HD colors that I really enjoy. And so I just use them interchangeably. I use them depending on what I need them to do, which is really what you should do. Hello, Holly Monster. Wow, 25 months. Insane. Did I miss your resub? Like, I must have, because I don't remember singing your double subiversary song. It must have happened during Reaper Live. Like, the only thing that I have going for me to get people to sub on my show is that I will sing you a song at 1 year and 2 years. Yeah, it's probably during another show. Yep. Oh, well. Well, thank you anyway. We appreciate it. A sub for the show is a vote for the show. I always tell people that. If you want Reaper to keep doing Twitch and doing all of our shows, sub. Please, toss us your Prime sub. You know you always forget to use it anyway. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I am. Yes. Because, we've got red-orange, so we may as well do blue-green. So I was thinking we hadn't done teal in a long time. So, all right, we've done our skin highlights. Let's just go there. Let's just go to our teal. So I just looked at some of my teals that I have right in my drawer. So for those of you who know me, you know that actually, even though I've created 500 colors for Reaper, I only keep about 100 of them right next to me in this drawer. And those are the colors that I really, really love and or use a lot. Sometimes I'll put a color in there that I also just want to use. Like, hey, I should put this in here. So what we've got, things that we could work with or mix. Let's see, we've got Spectral Glow, that's even lighter. And then if we want to go more green, we've got, let's back up. So the teals that I have that I popped out with, and some of them are greener and some of them are bluer, and we could absolutely use mixes of these, and I very well might. I'm kind of wondering what Tianzia Jade and Deep Ocean would make, for example. Hey, Bill, thank you for the Prime sub. Awesome. 10 months. Hey, 2 more, and you'll have a happy subiversary song if you want one. Yeah, that's true. You also have to have, I have time to, and a lot of people, especially creative people like Holly, are going to be like focusing their energy on actually like painting or doing, productive things for them rather than watching my butt sit here and talk to you guys. Masara, thank you for the resub. Awesome. 21 months. Dang, you're getting up to the double subiversary. That's fantastic. I don't like okay, so D Sparrow wants to ask, what's the brush on sealer for? Well, for one thing, I do use it for sealing models. I know, right? It's insane. So I do use brush on sealer for actually being a sealer. Always shake it up very well. When you see the agitator there, you want to shake it until the agitator goes into the mix. Because then you know that some of this white stuff here is matting medium, and that needs to be in solution. You want that to be in solution. So yes, I do use brush on sealer to actually seal things. I actually like it better than most of the spray on sealers nowadays. I used to use Testor's Dull Coat all the time, but that is no longer a thing. And I haven't tried, since they got bought out, I haven't tried the new thing that has replaced it. But it's so hard to get a sealer that matches the finish of your paint these days. So I have brush on sealer. I tend to use it. Often I find that, especially for display models, I will not seal at all, however. And the reason is that I just find that I don't need to. Master Series has very high adhesion. We use a base that has a high percentage of acrylic resins in it, which means that it's very durable. So essentially, if you're going to be doing a display model, you shouldn't need to seal. If you're going to be using it for gaming models, then yeah, you probably want to seal. And maybe you want to put a gloss spray on and then a dull spray to get, kind of at least a decent finish on it. But I do use this for washes. The reason I do not use it to build glazes is that I actually don't like the viscosity change that it brings for glazes. I like that viscosity change for washes. So I like it to be a little kind of gloopy for washes because that kind of gloopiness holds the wash where it needs to be. But when I'm glazing, I just want a really thin, fine coat. And I don't like this kind of skin over or gloopiness that the glaze mediums and the wash mediums and the brush on sealer gives. So essentially, that's why I don't use it for glazing. I find that my glazes always work better if I'm just thinning with water. Oh, right. Exactly, Bill. Yeah, totally, right? Actually, I was just talking, you guys. I currently do my personal stream on Thursday, right before Reaper Live. But I was kind of thinking I might switch it to a Saturday. Because I would love to have that time during the week to work on some other stuff. And I might get more people, more viewers on Saturday anyway, because people have more time. So... I recommend a matte top coat because when you're doing all this work, Bull, when you're doing all these nice highlights and details and stuff, the minute you put a gloss sealer on that, you can't see any of it. Like any fine detail that you paint on, the minute you put a gloss on, all you're going to see is that shine. You're not going to actually see any fine details. And especially when you get to the point where maybe you're trying to experiment with putting textures, painted on textures or freehand, the minute you put a gloss on there, it's really hard to see those things. Because the finish is going to interfere with it. So in order to see fine detail and to see all this detail come out like this, you want to have a matte, or at least the finish that we've got with Master Series, which is more like an eggshell, I kind of say. Eggshell matte, kind of like that. It's got a little bit of life to it, but it doesn't shine. I'm not sure yet, Basement. I mean, I'm kind of like split. I don't want to necessarily do it at night, but I was thinking maybe afternoon. I get tired easily in the evenings, and so I'm not as good socially or like with the energy. So maybe, I don't know, 2:30 to 4:30 or something. I'm not sure. I'm toying with the idea right now. And it really depends. But I need more time to do my social media stuff and to get my website up to date and stuff. And I'm struggling to find that time. So the 2 hours that I spend streaming on Thursday, which really doesn't get me many views or I have a loyal core of you who come to watch me, but that's about it. So I kind of have to wonder if maybe we could reach a little bit of a wider audience and I could free up some time to work on like updating my Painter website and stuff like that. If I switched it to Saturday. This is my thoughts. I has thoughts. Oh no, it won't be in the morning. I like my mornings to really work on writing, and also I work on my nonprofit in the mornings on the weekend. So, because I don't have enough to do. All right, let's talk teal. Oh, no, I wouldn't, like I said, I already have my morning weekends already assigned. Man, if you guys saw my to-do schedule, like my actual weekly, monthly schedule now, you would be like, when do you have time for fun? Because every day is regimented. Every day. Like, only in the evening do I have time to kick back, relax, and spend time with David. And that's after I cook dinner. So my life, it is a time management like execution. It's just it's crazy talk. I'm a very organized person. So I was thinking about mixing these two, and then maybe seeing what adding in Phantom Glow for highlights are. Or do you guys think I should go more blue? So we've got choices here. We can go more bluish or we can go more greenish. Hello, Congrove. So, but yeah, I want to mix these and see if this is a pretty color. My gut says that this should be a pretty color. Because Tianzia Jade is beautiful, but it is a little bit see-through. But Deep Ocean should give it a little bit more body and maybe a bit more coverage. So let's pop 2 drops of Tianzia, because I really do love this color. Some of the Pathfinder colors, I couldn't get them to have really high coverage just because of the pigments they used, and I had to match the swatch. I couldn't tune it, but they're beautiful. So you mean Deep Ocean? I don't have Marine Teal actually in my box. I only have Deep Ocean and Surf Aqua. I tend not to use Marine Teal. Let's see what we can do. There we go, Deep Ocean. So let's see what color this makes. This is why I love to mix. This is why y'all should learn to mix. Because it's the fun. It's the fun I used to have when I was mixing colors and making up new colors for Reaper. It's, let's mix these two things and see what it looks like. Hello, Space Toy. Dwarving, I think that, are they 329, Quindy? Quindy will know. Quindy will know what the paints are currently going for. If it's 329 or 349. I couldn't remember. A bottle. 369. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, because we had to do an increase. I still remember the time, you know, the price from 10 years ago. That's no longer a thing. But yeah, okay. So still under $4 a bottle. That's good. These are pretty color. Let's try to add a little bit of Phantom Glow. So I'm tuning it now. I've got this pretty teal. It is a pretty color. I do like it. I do want a little bit more coverage. So I'm going to add something that's still a teal, but that has a bit of white in it. I'm just going to add a tiny bit though. You can usually get away with adding just a little bit of white. That's a pretty color, but I feel like we need... Oh, Pathfinder paints are $3.99. Got it. Yeah, and that's perfectly good at Jabberwock. You might not get... You've got it. Pathfinder paints are $3.99. Okay, cool. Where are my clears? This is the question. This is a question I always ask myself when I'm like, hey, do I have clears around here somewhere? Sometimes I keep my clears around, and sometimes they're hiding in the other room. But I think I'm just going to put... I'm kind of looking for a way to jazz this up. The problem with Deep Ocean is that it has a tiny bit of black in it to take it dark. And so what that does is it means that our color isn't as bright as it could be. No basement. It's exactly what they set up there. It's a licensed line, and that means that Pathfinder has to get its cut. And paint, we don't make very much money on each bottle of paint as it is. Paint is a very low margin product because making the paints, the cost of the bases and the pigments that we use are so high that it really cuts into. And I mean, every bottle alone is going to cost you $1 right out the gate. And that's us. That's our cost. So it's like, or it's close to that. So yeah, it's because it's Pathfinder and Paizo, you know, is licensing us the stuff, so they have to make a little money off of it. I'm going to throw some Brilliant Green and Cyan Blue in here and see what I get. Sometimes you just got to experiment. I'm just making myself my own teal because, you know, I wish I had... I know, teal is something that as a paint line designer, I always struggled to make a color I really liked that had the coverage that I wanted. Like, that it's I think one of the challenging colors to do as a line designer. Okay, so we went blue that way, but we're getting more intense, and that's what I wanted. So let's pop some more Brilliant Green in. Yeah, licensing is a thing. But I mean, it's still under $4 a bottle. Just barely, but it is. All right, there we go. That's much better. I like that color better. So normally I would have thrown some, if you want the brightest, richest, most vibrant teal ever, then you mix clear green and clear blue. Or if you have phthalo green, use phthalo green with clear blue. And you will get a fantastic teal. So let's see. That's pretty good teal. Don't you think? What do you guys think of that color? Notice that it still is lacking a bit of coverage. And this is just the nature of phthalocyanine pigments. They really do not have much intrinsic coverage, and that's because they are very fine pigment grind. So the smaller the pigment can be ground, the less coverage it has. Whereas things like titanium white, which have a big clunky pigment grind, and yellow oxide, likewise has a big clunky pigment grind. Those colors have, those pigments have good intrinsic coverage. So colors with those pigments in them also have better coverage. The base that you use tends to influence coverage for the paint, I would say about 10 to 15%, depending on the base. So you can use higher coverage bases, but then you lose other qualities that you might want, like durability and adhesion and clarity. And also how well the paint stays in solution when you thin it. Oh, that's why we're using a Pathfinder paint today. Or no, not that one. This one. Tanzia. That's a Pathfinder color. Alrighty. Did I miss any other questions? Hey, Cervantes. Okay. What brushes am I using? Well, this is my crappy mixing brush, but it's still a Sable. It's a Winsor & Newton, but I don't do detail work with it. I do base coating with it sometimes, and I do mixing. My main brush that I use, let me see, where's my other one? There it is. So the two brush brands that I really like for really good brushes, and that's pretty much what I use, is high-end Sable brushes. I use Raphael, that's the one on the top, and Da Vinci, which is the one right there. And both of these are Kolinsky. They're going to say Kolinsky on the barrel. That means they're the top 2 grades of red Sable have the Kolinsky branding. So Kolinsky means, and there's Kolinsky there. And then this one is French, and this one is German. So both of these actually are size 1, but they're very different in size. And that is purely because from manufacturer to manufacturer and from series to series, brushes will vary as far as their scale and size and like their general shape as well. The shape of the brush is determined by the series number, and that is way down here. That's a 10 for this one, and it's an 8408 for that one. So that's what that extra number always means, is it's actually the shape of the brush. And you have everything from kind of a standard round, which is what most people think of when they think of miniature brushes and brushes in general. And then you've got things like this Raphael, which is actually a extra pointed round. And that means that you've got a very sharp taper here. You've got a long tapering end, essentially, instead of just a more rounded out end. Instead of kind of having a bulb shape that goes like a bulb up to the tip, you're having more of a straight, narrow taper. So those are the brushes that I use the most. I really love the Da Vinci. I've used the Da Vinci for over 20 years for all my competition painting and everything. And this baby's, I just love it. I've never gotten a bad brush from Da Vinci. I have one friend who has gotten one bad brush from Da Vinci in his entire life. So... All right, hold on. We have lots of questions flying in. So let's see here. So there's Cervantes. There you go. Those are the 2 brushes I like the most, but I will use a less expensive brush, like I said, for mixing, for base coating. This is just a professional watercolor Sable. This was probably a $5 or $6 brush, whereas these really good Sables tend to run more like $10 to $15, sometimes even higher depending on who you get them from. So shop around. Yeah, no problem. Sales pitch versus going with something like Vallejo. Our paint is very different from Vallejo dwarving, and it depends on what kind of painting you're doing. Master Series paint, I created it. So I created it to kind of fill the holes, things that I didn't like about other paint lines. I was a freelance painter, and then I was a hobby painter while I was working. And I sold my work a lot, and I was trying to paint to a fairly high standard, selling on eBay, doing stuff like that. So I wanted a paint, for one thing, that stuck to the model better. And I find that a lot of paints like Vallejo that use a thicker base, what they're doing there is they're using what's usually called a vinyl base, or a resin that's a large resin size. And essentially what that means is that when you thin the paint, if you're trying to do stuff like the layering I'm doing here, it's going to be more likely to rub off if it's a thin layer. And it tends to have that plasticky look. And when you thin it, it'll fall out of solution. I didn't like any of those things. So I ended up working with a paint base that was higher acrylic. And this is more like the old school Games Workshop paints in the Hex bottles. I don't have an example. But they were more clear, but they also were super hard, and they stuck to the model like anything, and they would stay in solution. So you have either one or the other on the paint chemistry end of things, and we're somewhere in the middle, but we err further away from the thick paint, the goopy paint, and more toward a more versatile paint. So if you're painting fast and you just really want to get a 1-coat base coat down and maybe a dry brush and be done, then you're probably better off with some of those other companies. If you want to learn to do more thinned paint applications, or you do a lot of glazing, or you do layering, or you do whatever, or really, really fine detail where you need thin paint and you need it to stay in solution, then I think MSP is the best paint line out there. The other thing about MSP is that because it's not so thick, when you do need to thin it, you don't have to work at it very hard to get it exactly where you want it. And all this is based on my personal painting style. So we ended up with a very different paint line. I would say MSP is different from anything else on the market because we don't go for coverage first. We go for functionality so that you can do anything with it easily. And so that it doesn't fight you when you're trying to thin it for some of those more advanced applications. And keep in mind, I loved Vallejo when I started at Reaper, and when I was hired at Reaper to create our paint line, Master Series Paint, Ed wanted a competitor to Vallejo. So I had a lot of experience with Vallejo, and there are some things about Vallejo I really still like, but I hate the adhesion. I can't get by it, and I hate when it separates. So yeah, so I'm happy with what I made in the long run, I guess. Duke, that's what the HD and Bones lines are for. Those lines tend to have much better coverage if you use things like Lantern Yellow especially, and Sunrise Orange and Volcanic Orange. You're going to find that those have better coverage out the gate. But when we went to our paint supplier and asked for like, hey, can you make a base that's like super thick like these other bases here? They were like, why would you even want to? That's so low quality. It's like the cheapest base on the market to like go that way. So our supplier wouldn't even allow us to do that because they honestly felt that it was crap paint and they wouldn't sell it to us. And I'm not shitting you here. This is what they told us. That was like, 18 years ago. So maybe things have changed, and I'm sure they have. But the highest coverage we've been able to do, you will find in the HD and Bones lines. So HD being canceled, HD ported into Bones. So now it's just the Bones line. But you should find that in general, Bones colors have higher coverage. You also, frankly, should not have a problem with base coats. As long as you're using them, I would thin them, shake well, and thin them like 5-1 if you want a thicker base coat. And it should still, in 2 thin coats, you should get a really smooth base coat. So in short, we already have 2 different lines, and the one you would probably want to focus on is Bones. Bones is also the line I feel like is like kind of the pinnacle of my paint design career, because we had new technology that we were using, and I also was just able to integrate all the lessons that I learned from creating colors for the core line, over 300 colors there, and then the HD line as well. So I learned a lot over the 15 years, and I was able to use a lot of that knowledge to make, I think, the Bones line higher coverage, better colors in general. Like it's a superior set. If you told me, hey, Anne, I can only buy 108 color set from Reaper, and that's all the paint I ever will have in my life, I would say get the Bones. Yeah, I mean, the strength of the core line is that it's got all the specialty paints in it, like the liners and the clears and, the single pigment colors, the primers, the additives, the everythings. And it also has, because it's bigger, it just has a lot more variety of color. But as you point out, the coverage can vary from paint to paint, and that's just like artist paints, just like artist tube paints. Some pigments just don't cover very well. And in order to make them cover, you have to add white. And sometimes you don't want to do that because you want the color. So we tried to strike a balance between those things. All paint companies do. But I like my stuff to be mixable. So it's all different priorities. But yeah, I would just stick to the Bones line. Unless you're getting paints like browns, like Ruddy Leather, Russet Brown, some of my favorite colors from Core. Any brown is probably going to have a lot of coverage because the earth pigments that you use to go into browns have intrinsically better coverage. So it's rare to find a transparent brown unless it's extremely orangey. Hey, Dogfather. Interesting. Honestly, I hate to do this. I do use our brush on primer a lot. I don't prime Bones at all though. So, you know, if you ever do pick up Reaper bones, I just wash them. But when you're dealing with metal and resin, I do prime. And I'm going to go off market or off brand here and say that Tamiya, T-A-M-I-Y-A, or Tamiya, I've heard it said both ways. It's a Japanese company. Their fine surface primer, when I need a white or a light gray, I really like. I especially really like their light gray. It's a smaller can and they are more pricey, but it's just, I've never had a problem with it in different environments. Like I've never had a problem with it in really cold or really wet weather. It's never primed me wrong. And I can't say that about any other primer brand. What I use from day to day, if I'm, you know, just grabbing a primer can, honestly, I do Games Workshop when I can get it. It is expensive, but at least it's a big can, and I do really like their black, and I like their white. I like both. I probably like the Tamiya a little bit better if I'm going white or gray, though, and the GW for black. Yeah, exactly. Good example, Crow, is rich leather is transparent, but it is also yellowy orangey. Yeah. When you see a brown that's really, really vibrantly yellow orange, that means it's got a lot of yellow pigment in it, and yellow pigment doesn't cover. So any pigments that I'm adding into that have to kind of fight that, but I'm also aiming for a very specific color. I mean, rich leather, I use it for everything, from skin tones to NMM to actual leather to just highlighting browns to using it as a base for yellow. I use it for everything. And if I had changed that color to get it more coverage, it wouldn't be that versatile. That's the thing, is you can't have everything in a paint. Some people will try to sell you that you can, but there is always a weakness. There are always things that a paint is better or worse at. And for me, I want that color. I can deal with it. You know, if I have to put on 2 coats, I'm okay with that. Sometimes I even use that transparency because I do a lot of underpainting. So I do a lot of laying down white in a pattern and then painting that color over the top. So I don't even want great coverage in that case. So, you know, it's always down to usage. How are you going to use it? Yeah, it's pretty much the straight dough pure dwarfing. I don't know that you can find another one of me anywhere that's actually like streaming every day that can answer your paint chemistry questions, but I learned just enough paint chemistry to make myself dangerous, so. All right, I'm going to actually start painting while we talk, though. I got really excited, and, you know, whenever anybody asks about paint lines and paint design, that was my favorite part of my job for 15 years, so I, like, get all excited and go crazy and don't paint, and just talk. Tamiya is your go-to Rithiak? Yeah, I really like their primer. I just feel like it's super high quality. Like I said, my only problem with them is they don't do black, and so I tend to go to Games Workshop for that black. So, okay, so here we go. I've thinned it. I've added in some colors that are actually pretty vibrant, but I'm getting decent coverage out the gate. This is only thinned about 5:1, and so you should be able to get a decent base coat. I mean, it's not super opaque, so you can see some variation, but all I need to do is really one coat and a touch-up with this color. I love this color, by the way. I think I'm going to shade it. I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to shade it with. Maybe a blue and then bring it up with more of a green. I think we're going to do that. I really like that with teal, how you can do it either way. You can shade with green and bring it up with blue, or you can shade with blue and bring it up with green, or you can shade with purple, or even brown. You can shade with so many things. For what reason would I use different color primers? Because have you heard, you've seen Zenith priming, right? Actually, I have examples. I'm so good. So essentially, here you go, Dogfather. So we've got, and I can stop. Oh, I need to get, pardon me. Always paint against a wet edge. So finish your section before you go off on a tangent. And there we go. Pardon me while I block this in. I'll answer your question, Dogfather. So when I use black, it's almost always to do Zenith treatment, where I'm putting down black and then I'm doing a spray of white over the top to bring out the details of the model. This kind of pre-shades it for you, because when you paint a paint over a dark color like the black, it will naturally look darker, especially if you're using something that's kind of semi-translucent like this teal. This teal would look so different. Let's actually show. Let's try to do it. So if I took this teal and I painted it over this bow bit, and then up here, you can still see the darks and the lights, even though I painted that teal over the surface. And this is how contrast paint works, by the way. is you've got like darks and lights underpainted, or you've got like a spray, a zenith spray like this, and you put one coat down, and because your paint has a little bit of transparency to it, the darks, actually the black primer shows through and makes a dark teal, and the white shows through and makes a light teal. And you, ta-da, you're done. Maybe put one more highlight on it, you're done for the gaming table. But yeah, so that's why you would do that. This is why a lot of people would do it. If you want to paint fast, doing this and then maybe accompanying it with even with sketch style. So essentially, if you take this model, because it's not going to be perfect, I usually take pure white and I add extra strong like highlights and really pick out areas that I want to be light, and then paint it that way. So for me, I don't actually use black primer to use black primer, because for me, that's just going to take everything too dark. I'm going to have to fight too hard to get it back up to get a bright midtone. Like if we had put this teal over black, boy, we'd be working a long time to get this color. This color would be so dark, and we probably would have to mix white into it or underpaint with white to get it. So black primer can really darken down your colors. A lot of painters like that because it makes their shadows very easy. They don't have to do anything. They just have to, paint one coat over it and leave it, and then highlight other stuff. So it is a time saver in that way, but it's not a time saver when you try to put highlights on with certain colors because you're fighting that black. So then you have to stop and maybe put a layer of white down and then do your highlights. So we're kind of going to get in here and try to get all the areas that we can kind of see this color. We also have to decide if he's actually wearing a belt or if this waist color here, there is a belt in there, but there's a belt there. Man, there's too many belts. But I think the cloth up here is also going to be teal. So here we got to start thinking about repeating our colors. And just to reiterate how I made this sucker, we're pretty much doing a 2-2-2. So a 1-to-1-to-1, but a 2-2-2 because I also added in a little bit of something else. So a 2-2-2 of these guys, followed by a 1 of cyan. And you're like, Anne, why did you actually add in the brilliant green and cyan blue, and why those colors? Well, let me tell you. It's because brilliant green, I wanted it to go greener, right? And brilliant doesn't have any black in it. So because Deep Ocean does, I had to overwhelm that a little bit if I wanted a brighter color. When you add black, you kill brightness. Brilliant green is very bright, and so I added that in. I added cyan both because I wanted it to go a little more blue for my base coat, and also because cyan has excellent coverage. When you add a color with excellent coverage into a not so covering color, you get better coverage. I mean, that's why people add white in canvas painting to transparent colors to build them up. Contrast paints are great for the Zenith thing, for gaming. I mean, do them. They're just really thick washes. I mean, that's just what they are. And they use super fine pigments, and I think they could be very useful for gaming painting or for fast base coats. I mean, their biggest limitation, right, is that you have limited colors. You could just mix your own contrast paints by making a thick wash with some, medium, or in our case, brush on sealer, matte medium or brush on sealer with a couple drops of paint. You could just do it that way and make any color you wanted, right? But the contrast paint's great because it's consistent. So when you're doing an army and you need this olive color for all your army, it's super fast to use that. So I think it's when GW did it, I'm like, oh, they're genius. They've cornered, they've done something that's really unique, that normally you would have to build yourself and remix all the time, and they've bottled it. So I think pretty good. And yeah, my Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig. I have a crap ton of stuff on there. Honestly, if you sign up, I've been doing it almost 3 years. My 3-year anniversary is coming up in December, January. And I do one piece of content per level per month. So if you signed on at $15, you'd get 48 at least. Actually more than that, because my first year I went a little crazy and did a lot more. So you'd get over 50 pieces of content on all aspects of painting and color, and it's videos and PDFs. So it's a great buy right now, and I'm probably going to do a special in January, but I haven't decided yet. So yeah, guys, yeah, peeps. My Patreon. I love it, actually. It actually keeps me afloat. It is what enables me to do this stream. Because if I had to run out and get a real job instead of painting for a living, I wouldn't be able to do this anymore. So I really, really want to keep doing this stream and do my Patreon and have that be my life, because I have, like, you guys have enabled me to do the life that, to have the life that I've always wanted. Like, how do you feel about that? You, my patrons, and my Twitch stream subbers, because even though the subs that you give here don't really go back to me directly, Reaper is still paying me to do this. So it is part of my income that allows me to stay freelance. So yeah, you guys, and all of my supporters on Patreon have helped me have the life that I have always wanted. So you can feel really good about yourselves right now, okay? Really good. Let that lighten up your heart and feel good. Ah, Tom Mason. Yeah, he's good. He did some work for Reaper. I think he's mostly doing his own thing now, right? But I remember that when he did some stuff for Reaper, I thought he was really good. He's got a really distinctive style. A lot of people don't do Patreon. It is a big time commitment. I decided to make it the core of what I do as a freelancer. But a lot of people, you know, they would rather do direct output. And I think sculptors, for sure, prefer to be sculpting and not having to document everything they do. But it's cool that he has YouTube. I'll have to look him up. Is he Tom Mason on YouTube, Dwarving? Like, can I look up, like, Tom Mason or Tom Mason Miniatures? Or does he go under his company name? Does he have a company name? Thanks, Thormel. But it'll always be there for you. Like, that's the cool thing. Thank you for being my patron, by the way. And that's the thing is like for $2 a month, you can search it, remember. So if you're about to start a model and you are looking for something about, you know, like undead skin tones, I try to keyword all of my posts really well. So you should be able to find exactly what you need if I've done it for your level. All right, there we go. Sorry, I had a little bit of flash there on the bottom that I'd forgotten. Tom Mason, awesome. Let me make a note. I always like to make a sticky note so I don't forget. Tom Mason Patreon, or Tom Mason YouTube. Yeah, I always love that. When sculptors go out of their way to, like, help other people become, and there's so many of them do. So many of them are, like Bob and Julie here on the stream. Green users here on the stream is Bob Rodolfi and Julie Guthrie. Dwarving, so they're on here. Every once in a while, Julie will give words of wisdom, or Bob will, about sculpting, and it's just invaluable. But all the sculptors that I've met are just so welcoming and really fantastic people that really want, if you have interest in sculpting, they want to teach you the thing they love. Like, it's just fantastic. Tom Mason YouTube. Thank you for that recommend, Dwarving. I really I had no idea who was doing that. Now I'm going to go and check it out because I need to up my green stuff level. And I could use some input on 3D too. I need to go searching. Oh, there we go. You can find his Patreon on the about page of his YouTube. Smart man. That's fantastic. Yeah, Patreon is not a search platform, so sometimes it's hard to find people on Patreon. And you should instead look at their social media, and there's almost always, if they have a website or they have a YouTube or they have a Twitch or all of the above, you will find a link to their Patreon there. And Patreon doesn't do that because right now they really are all in the business of serving the artists. And so what that means is they want to provide a stable platform that will give artists consistent income, and that's their mission statement. And if they started to do searchable, they would have to reorient and essentially put more focus onto serving the consumer instead of serving the artist. So that's what they've said before about, like, why they don't make Patreon more searchable, or why they don't invest the resources, because it would take a lot of resources to start being that kind of thing. But I do love Patreon to death. Like I said, without it, I would not be able to do this. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this. It makes me very grateful. very thankful. Because for years, I've wanted to do this. For years, while I was at Reaper, I had, I was able to make paint and create a paint line, or several, which was awesome, and honestly the thing I loved. And I was able to create miniatures and hang out with a lot of awesome artists. But what I couldn't do, what I didn't have time to do, is the stuff that I'm doing here and the things that I do on my Patreon. I didn't have time to stop and educate and explain and actively help people with their painting. And so the fact that I finally have the means to do that, I have the time to do that, means the world to me. I'm going to put some white here, guys, because I accidentally painted over this part of his costume. This is actually cloth around his waist, and I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be teal. But I accidentally had painted over it, so I'm going to use some white to underpaint, just like I said I had to. Working on a gnome. Cool. Cool. Yeah, shout out to Tom. Like I said, he did some work for Reaper a long time ago. I remember his stuff. So cool. That's great that he's out there doing that stuff. I love artists who love to teach. Those are the people that keep the hobby going. What did I do? This summer I went home to visit my family. Let's do a walk down backwards lane. And since I came during the appropriate time of year, we went to the county fair, which I hadn't done since I was a little kid. And the thing that hit me when I was there is how little craft stuff there was. Compared to when I was a kid, we had a really active 4-H painting instructor, and we had a really active woodworking instructor and really active sewing instructors and stuff like that. And there wasn't anything. There was not nearly the amount of art in painting or colored pencil. And Mom said, she was just well, you need really involved, because she taught 4-H sewing for a while when we were kids. And she's you need to have adults who are good at it, who like to teach it, who are willing to teach it to kids. And when you don't have that, that's when you see those art forms, you don't see the level of interest, because there's nobody teaching it. So that's why I say kudos to all of the sculptors and painters out there who are teaching. You keep our hobby going more than you know. And I think the emphasis, too, on teaching in our hobby is important. We encourage people to get good, and we encourage them to teach what they know to their friends, right? And to other people if they have an interest in it. Oh, nice. Oh, great. Fantastic, Dwarving. Hey, all you have to do is paint and put some work into trying to get better. If you're putting effort toward improving, you're going to get better at this. A lot of it is just practice. And then when you run into a roadblock where you feel I'm just not getting how to do this technique, there's always somebody on YouTube or somebody on Patreon or somebody on Twitch who could probably help you with it. So that's the great thing about miniatures. But yeah, the only thing that separates a person who just kind of, busts out paint jobs and never gets better from a person who actually starts getting better is the interest and will in getting better. There will always be people who are just I'm happy with the level I'm at. I don't really feel the need to improve. And that's great. That's cool. But when you do have an urge to get better and to really enjoy, what you create, that's when you really, the sky's the limit. You can go anywhere with that. Yeah, I feel like there may have been, it's not really a mold line. It's just the details here are a little bit hard to see. And so I'm trying to kind of put in some liner here and figure out what some of these details are. I think that maybe this wrap just has a few different layers. I see this, and then there's another sculpted section here. And this is how underpainting can help you, by the way. So if you block something in dark, and then you come back in with white, and you kind of leave the dark where you think it goes, and use the white to bring in details, then you can kind of create a map. This is how this is how this thing should be painted. Either that's trim or it's going to be just a fold, but I think the upper part here is trim, so I'm going to block that in pretty solid. I'll probably make it gold, but I might make it something else. There, that lets me kind of block that trim in like as a different part. Yeah, I think my eyesight is definitely, like, I have to hold things out farther to see the details in them these days. I'm trying to do some eye exercises to refocus and make myself really focus down a little bit more. Because I tend to either be focusing on a monitor that's, like, out here, or I'm focusing on a tiny miniature, but with glasses, which are totally a crutch. So I used to be able to paint like this without glasses, and no way now. Ah. Yeah, Grindy Low is a teal. I don't have it like right next to me. I think, as I recall, though, it is a teal. But Phantom Glow is my favorite, like, teal highlighter, as far as a greenish one. And then Spectral Glow is more blue. So here's the difference between these two. They're both teal highlighters, but the one you use if you want to go more blue, and the other one you use if you want to go more green. And Spectral Glow is also a fantastic highlighter for blues because highlights tend to get warmer as they go lighter. And so having your blue shift slightly toward green warms it up. So Spectral Glow is a fantastic highlighter for blue. Oh, wow. We're almost done with the stream. We have 15 minutes. Well, dang it. I need to block in that thing and I need to undercoat a little bit here because I left a gap, but there's really no gap there. I was thinking that maybe the wrap had multiple layers, but I think it's just that edge. So I've done this kind of underpainting in white here, leaving the dark around the edges, kind of creating my own zenith prime, and then I'm just going to paint the teal right over the white and the dark, and leave that edge that I identified. And that lets us bring our teal up a little bit more onto the model. And this section too. Now there is kind of an edge here, which is kind of why I thought there was, and it may be that he's just kind of got a wrap in several layers, and I'll have to deal with that in the future, but for now that works. Now I have to ask myself, do I want to bring teal up here? Because that would be the logical thing to do, would be to carry the teal. There's a wide belt here, but there is cloth area here, and there's a fringe. And there's cloth here. So now what we got to do is say, okay, how are we going to carry the teal up here? And probably we want to bring the cloth up. There's just a little bit of area, but because our color is brighter, this teal is brighter, it's going to show up, especially when we're just dealing with some neutral belts and pouches here. And because it's complementary to this red-orange, complementary colors always make each other look more intense. So the presence of the red-orange in the skin tone is going to make this teal show up, even though there's just a little bit of it up here. Oh, yeah. There are some things you can sometimes do for that sort of thing. It depends. But it depends. Everybody's condition is different. Yeah, it sucks when we have medical crap get in the way of our hobby. I think I'm going to have to make this fringe a different color because I went teal there and I don't want more teal up against the teal. All right. I think I've got all that teal blocked in. And I've got a belt here that's going to go over there and another belt there. So I have a little tiny bit of teal in there. It's probably not going to show up in the end, but I'll put it in anyway. Man, he's got a lot of crap on him. This is a mini with too much crap. But I only did one coat, and you can see the teal is pretty solid. Like, even though it's a little bit thin, like, when you've got a color like this, where it kind of looks like that falling off the palette, This is still a pretty good color, especially over a light base coat. Like this gray is a good, like, probably the best base coat for this. A white would definitely show you where the paint was pooling more. And the gray is like nice and neutral. It doesn't really do that. It kind of smooths out the color a bit in a weird way. But using a little bit of thinning your paint just a little for base coats is always a good tactic. Even if it means you have to do 2 coats, your coats are going to be a lot smoother. You're not going to get globbiness or unevenness when you thin your base coats. And thin paints actually dry faster than thicker when you're applying a lot of the color. So it will speed you up a little bit, which was counterintuitive, but true. It'll change though, remember, D-Sparrow. This is a base coat, and this is not the final color, not by a long shot. Because as we add our shadows and highlights, this is going to shift. That's like the coolest part of painting and shading and highlighting with different colors. But even if you just use a darker teal and a lighter teal, depending on how much surface you cover with those colors, with those darks and lights, you will see the color change. It will no longer be like this just solid, bright color. That said, I'm going to just go through and touch up some areas where I can see that I might want a little bit of a more solid base. Make sure that I've got everything kind of a nice solid base coat. You want a nice solid even base coat before you start adding shadows and highlights. Just set yourself up for success. It only takes a moment because, you know, you're not so much trying to like cover it. You're just trying to get another smooth, fast layer of color down at this point. Since you're not worried about coverage or brushstrokes or evenness necessarily, you're just trying to get a nice, smooth additional layer down. You can even thin your paint a little bit more and it'd help smooth out anything if you had anything that was kind of rough. Oh, there's a fold there. Or there's a piece of teal that I totally missed. That's weird. Yeah. Sometimes there's just like weird little details underneath or on the edges of things, and you just have to decide, is that cloth? I do think that this guy has way too many things like dangling from his belt that have no visible means of support or that are only on a chain. Like, how annoying would that be to have a lantern chained to your belt with nothing but one long chain? Like, most obnoxious piece of gear ever invented for an adventurer, I want to say. Unless he's got all of his gear magically enchanted so that it stays out of his way all the time. But seriously, dude. Get yourself a proper lantern pole. Or a minion to hold it. Do not set yourself on fire. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. All right. That's looking pretty good. We've got a little bit of teal. We can see a little teal here, a little teal here. We'll have to ask ourselves if we're going to integrate some teal into the design of our cape. We've got a great cape here. It means we can do a lot of freehand. Yeah, we'll be doing some freehand on this guy. Or it's cursed, yes. Yeah, invisible suspenders. There's got to be, you know, when we think about it, there's got to be all these cantrips that the D&D book just doesn't cover. Because you know wizards, they would make the silliest quality of life little persnickety cantrips like I wear a whole bunch of things dangling from me, but they never get in my way. That's a cantrip, right? Stuff like that. Enchants. Like a freedom of movement enchant that didn't do anything actually useful or get you to like move freer in water or mud. It just meant that your stuff stayed out of your way. I'm just still thinking on that, Crowley. I was kind of maybe thinking of going a dark blue because dark blue really works well with teal. And then doing some teal detailing in it. Maybe even some orange detailing in it. And then some freehand. Like, just, I don't know. I'm kind of messing around with ideas in my head. Yeah, the toast and butter my bread cantrip. Exactly. Right? Right? Ah. Make me tea cantrip. Pour me a glass of wine cantrip. It's what the Invisible Stalker does when it's not out murdering people. It's actually pretty domestic. Who knew? But Invisible Stalkers are secretly, they love housework. Nothing makes them happier than correctly brewing a finicky pot of green tea. Little did you know. Oh, hello, Professor Jelly. Yeah, I mean, it works because the yellow, like, accents the green, right? You just build a softer green highlight. So, well, I mean, but it's the same thing. We do the same stuff. I went to art school. I was painting on canvas and doing watercolors before I started miniature painting, or while I started miniature painting. But honestly, I use the same tricks on miniatures that I use on canvas. It's just you've got a 3D surface, so you have to kind of figure in things about the way shadows are going to be cast from the sculpt, in addition to, you know, the stuff we normally have to work with just doing the sketch, right? So there's actual shadows and highlights that you're working with at the same time as you're working with all the other stuff, the suggested and accentuated. And then you're working at such a small scale as well, as opposed to canvas. So yeah, you can tell I do both. I think that a lot, there's a couple of us mini painters who do a lot of 2D art as well. Rhonda Bender's another one. She has a stream on this program as well. She does a lot of different just two-dimensional art forms, just to essentially to get a wider knowledge of art and light and color and everything. And then she brings that back and applies it to miniature painting. She has a great blog. It's called birdwithabrush.com. And she has a Patreon as well, which is patreon.com/birdwithabrush. But Rhonda's my friend, and she's really good at explaining things. She's so good. It's such a talent. It's a rare talent to find somebody who can break down stuff and explain it really well in art, because so much of art is subjective. But she's really good at breaking down techniques, and I would highly recommend her blog. I'm going to block in the shadow just in the dark. No problem. Welcome. Yeah, I love talking. I mean, I bought some canvases for the first time in years, literally years, because I've been putting all my time into miniatures, because that's what supports me. But I did actually pick up a couple of nice linen canvases, and I'm actually getting kind of excited to whip out the tube paint again. So it's coming. I just it's freeing up the time for it, right? Separate from what I do normally. It's always the problem with art, is giving yourself time to do it. Finding the time to do it. So I'm using some Death Knight Black here, but you could use any dark paint, any dark purple, dark blue. I tend to like shading teals with blues and purples. That's just me. So since this is essentially a blue-violet liner, I'm using it to block in the bottom of the cloth there, because you really don't need to paint that. And you can suggest some teal in there if you really want to, but the fact is nobody's looking at that. So painting it just a dark color and getting the edge of the cloth in teal is more than enough. Yeah, I hadn't let myself like paint on linen canvases for, oh gosh, I got out of art school a long time ago. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, I like to do really smooth and detailed stuff. So linen made more sense for my painting style than a rougher canvas. Oh yeah. Yeah, in a galaxy far, far away. Long time ago. Yep. But you never lose the interest in it. And my fiance, I should say, new fiance, we do a lot of art shows together and open galleries and stuff like that, open studios. And because he's really into that, and he also is a miniature painter, but not a 2D artist. He just really enjoys art. So the fact that I'm going to all these galleries and all these open studios is just making me itch to paint again on a canvas. Like I go and I'm just like, oh, I want to do stuff. So it's definitely coming. Got myself some cool mediums to work with. Just to play around. I haven't let myself play for a long time. Playing is important, everybody. Just letting yourself play with your hobby and not always having like a goal of getting something finished for something specific, but just painting something because you really, really want to try it. Or it's a model you really, really love, even though it doesn't have... I mean, that's how I got into bust painting. It didn't have any gaming utility, but it was really pretty. They were really pretty, and I wanted to paint them just because they were really pretty. So let yourself play. Let yourself have fun with your hobby so that you don't burn out. There we go. Getting in some of those shadows there. I just used that Death Knight Black to kind of shade underneath a bit. Just start to like kind of block in some shadows down here. Not done. Thanks, Prof. Yeah, the feels. Yeah, I know, right? It's been so many years since art school. Art school, everybody wants to figure out their identity, right? Because it's college. Everybody wants to figure out like what their thing is. And I never really figured out my thing in art school. And then I went out here and got to be like a master mini painter. And then I found my thing. But there's still more things probably that I could do. So going back to canvas is going to be very interesting because I think I'm going to have to experiment a lot to figure out what the Anne of today wants to do, right? What speaks to the Anne of today. I tried to explain that to somebody the other day. They were like, oh yeah, I've got a friend and she was working on a canvas and I love this picture and I wish she would finish it. And I'm like, oh, how long ago was she working on it? And they were like, oh, like 10 years. And it was a pretty young person. And I'm like, she's probably a very different person now than when she started that painting. So don't expect her to finish it. And that is, I mean, she could, but you tend to do art that speaks to who you are in the moment. It's true of writing and it's true of painting. Infinite things, right? Yeah, it's overwhelming. I actually am going to mix it up a bit. You're exactly spot on, Dwarving, because I've gotten some sculpturing kind of mediums so I can build up objects and textures out of the canvas to make it 3D. Because, you know, you can't work on miniatures and then go to something totally flat. You want to, like, you know, play. You want to, like, use my, I've got all sorts of awesome Liquitex mediums. I'm so excited. So I'm very, very excited to try those. Heavy-bodied stuff that you can build up forms with and stuff like that. Do a tiny Russian landscape. I don't know. It's all going to be playing. Like, the biggest thing with me with going back to canvas, and it's a challenge for everybody, it probably is a challenge for some of you guys too, right? The fear of starting. Like the indecision and the freezing when you try to make a decision about what to do. You're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to work on first? And you freeze. So I'm going to have to, like, disconnect my inner editor and my inner critic and just start doing something and just have fun and just do the work. And I think that's the biggest lesson, actually, to bring this full circle back to National Novel Writing Month, which I'm currently doing. It's the biggest thing with creativity. It's just do it. Just do it. Who cares if it doesn't turn out? If this one doesn't turn out, you can paint another one. You can write another one. You can go back and fix it. You can do whatever. But getting out of that, you know, I have one chance to make this awesome. You know, getting out of that mindset, because it kills you. It kills your creativity, and then you end up doing nothing, and then you end up feeling bad about yourself when you should be joyful about doing your art or your craft or your whatever you're doing. So biggest thing I can say to anybody who's in that mode and, like, stuck in it is just do it. Just get out. Just do it. Do something. If you do anything, if you let your inner self out to, like, play and enjoy, like, it's still going to be happy. And just, like, enjoy the happy. Don't hold yourself up to some standard. Who cares about standards? Standards don't help anybody. Well, okay, sometimes standards help people, but not right away. 3 new canvases at the moment. Yeah. Good. Oh, neat. Yeah, that's pretty cool. The concrete on wood, that's very graffiti. Like, that's super industrial. I love that. Guy's got a vibe with the industrial, right? You gotta love that. You just gotta love it. People like doing stuff that speaks to who they are. Like, that's the core. That's the core of creativity. Everybody's creative inside. It's just a lot of times we feel like we're not allowed to be or we don't have time to be. All right, guys, it's about 5 after, so we have gone an hour and a half. We've gotten stuff locked in for teal. I'm using the Death Knight Black, which is a blue-violet, to do some shading on it to kind of see if I like that effect. Jury's out at this point, but you know what? If we don't like it, it's very easy to fix it. It's very easy to bring it back up. And that's the thing, is that's why you should just dive ahead and try things, because you can always go back. Guess what? It's acrylic. You can paint over it. You can paint over it lots of times before you start building it up if you're using thinner paint like I use. So, you know, you can put 20 layers on this probably before you notice that you were losing a little bit of detail, because a layer of paint is like infinitely thin. So yeah, don't worry about it. Just jump in, do things, decide if you like it, make a note if you like it, make a note if you don't. Speaking of making a note, I need to get out my watercolor card. And make a note. We were making a note on skin tones. So I'm going to use the other side. We use watercolor paper for this to make a note on my base coat. Ooh, that's such a pretty color. Yeah, I think I've got a good, this is a good teal. So even though it's kind of a pain to mix it, I think I'm going to keep it. So we put a swatch down of that, and then I'm going to do my Death Knight. We don't know if we're going to keep doing Death Knight, but we're going to put it down as a possibility for shade just to make sure. You're not a fan now, but you might be a fan later. Sorry you don't like it, Tendrick. I kind of like it, so I'm going to keep working with it. I think that I can make this look pretty cool. But remember, it always changes. Always changes. Yeah, exactly, Dwarving. Dwarving's got it. Yeah, because there's a lot of room for freehand borders down here, right? It kind of goes in and out, so we'd have to make it fairly simple, but there's still room for it. So, and there's tons of room for freehand back on the cape. So let's back out a little bit so we can all see our colors. I'm just going to write down my formulas after we're off stream. But there we go. So we've made a start, and we can decide how we feel about it. Like I said, I want to get more shadows into it. I'm still thinking I should have gone Ritterlich blue with some shadows here, so I may back out of the Death Knight Black and go with more of a pure blue. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll use both. It's always a grand experiment. And the minute you decide that you personally don't like it is the time when maybe you just paint over it with a light gray, and then you paint over it with a different color. So everybody's different. Watercolor paper is thicker than note cards. A note card is usually more like I want to say an 60 or 80 pound stock. These guys are let me see, 120. This watercolor poundage, 140 pound, I think. Yeah, 140 pound. So essentially, probably about twice as thick. I just like it because then I can use both sides, Crowley, because then, you know, this didn't soak through, and this, and they don't warp like index cards will. They're just nice and stiff. So I can still file them and stack them. So yeah. Yeah, it was nice having you on the stream. Everybody, all of the newer people that we're talking today, thanks. Welcome. Yeah, cool. It was nice to meet you, Dwarving. I hope you have a great day. Yes, and I will be streaming on my own stream channel, twitch.tv/paintingbig, later this afternoon at about 4 p.m. USA Central Time. And we're probably actually going to be working on Pirate Girl. I kind of have ideas for Pirate Girl. So I really want to get her more finished, and I want to do some freehand, and I want to do some stuff on her. So she's getting close. So we'll probably work on her. And maybe, I think Werewolf is mostly finished, but we may do a little work on him if I see something that needs to be done. So thanks, everybody, and I hope you all have a lovely day. And I'm not sure, who do we have coming up, Quindy? Did I miss it? Oh, Crafty Creative. That's right, with Josh. All right. I hope that you give Josh some love, and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.